Welcome to the Korean Boss and Black Queen channel. This channel will bring you powerful love stories between Korean men and Black women, filled with passion, tension, forbidden attraction, tender moments, and even dark sides. Enjoy listening. Please subscribe to the channel to hear more great stories. I froze a live relief fund in 12 minutes, and by the time the last transaction blinked out, I had just declared war on people who never leave witnesses. I did it with my finger hovering over a key that felt heavier than a gun, because the numbers on my screen were lying, and I was the only one who could see it. My name is Danielle Mercer. I am 34, an accountant, a widow, and I do not tolerate gray areas. But that night, gray was all I had left. The office was empty except for the low hum of servers and the soft ticking of the wall clock that suddenly sounded like a countdown. I watched the final script execute, line by line, locking access points, rerouting funds, sealing accounts that had never officially existed. My inbox exploded within seconds. Subject lines stacked on top of each other. Urgent, confused, angry. What did you do? Why are accounts frozen? Who authorized this? I did not answer, because buried under those alerts was something worse, something that should not have been there at all. A second ledger, hidden behind layers of routine audit data, masked as rounding errors and emergency allocations. Small amounts, invisible to anyone who did not spend their life staring at decimals. But when I pulled them together, they told a story that made my hands go cold. Gold shipments disguised as medical supply reimbursements. Currency exchanges routed through refugee assistance grants. Identity transfers buried inside relocation funds. This was not mismanagement. This was a system, and I had just cut its oxygen. I leaned back in my chair and pressed my fingers against my temples, trying to slow my breathing. I should have reported it quietly, followed protocol, let compliance handle it. That is what a normal accountant would do. But I had already tried that. 2 weeks ago, I flagged discrepancies to my supervisor. He smiled too quickly, told me I was overthinking, and reassigned the files. Yesterday, a colleague who asked similar questions stopped coming to work. No explanation. No goodbye. Just gone. My screen flickered, and a new window opened without my command. For a second, I thought I was being hacked. Then I saw it. A name embedded deep inside the hidden ledger, repeated across transactions that spanned continents. Lee Hyun-woo. I did not know who he was yet, but the pattern around his name was too precise to be random. My phone vibrated against the desk, sharp and sudden. An unknown number. I let it ring once, twice, 3 times, then I answered. Silence. Then a man's voice, low and steady, as if he already knew exactly where I was sitting. You should not have touched that. The line went dead. I stared at my reflection in the dark screen, my pulse hammering in my ears. 12 minutes. That was all it took to lock the system. It was also all it took to make me a target. I did not sleep that night, not even for a minute. I sat in my apartment with the lights off, laptop open, replaying every number I had seen until they stopped feeling like data and started feeling like evidence. The kind of evidence that gets people buried quietly. You would think numbers are neutral, that they do not lie. That is what I believed for years. Numbers were rules. Numbers were safety. Numbers were the one place where grief could not reach me after my husband died. But this was different. These numbers had intent. They had direction. They moved like something alive. And once I saw the pattern, I could not unsee it. I went back to the beginning, to the first anomaly that should have been nothing. A small discrepancy in a quarterly report, less than $5,000, written off as emergency variance. I remember staring at it for too long, feeling that itch in the back of my mind that never lets me ignore something unfinished. So I pulled the supporting entries. Then the linked accounts. Then the cross-border transfers. Each layer looked clean on its own, but together they formed a loop. Money came in labeled as humanitarian aid, moved through 3 or 4 shell allocations, then exited as something else entirely. Precious metals. Foreign currency. Sometimes even biometric documentation fees. I felt my stomach twist when I realized what that meant. They were not just moving money. They were moving people. Identities. Entire lives reduced to line items. I whispered to myself, this cannot be real, as if saying it out loud might undo it. But it did not. It only made the silence heavier. 2 weeks ago, I tried to do the right thing. I printed everything I had and walked into my supervisor's office. He barely looked at the documents. He leaned back in his chair, gave me that calm, rehearsed smile, and said, Danielle, you are one of our best, but you are digging where you should not. Let compliance handle it. That was the moment something shifted. Not because he dismissed me, but because he did it too quickly. Like he had been waiting for me to notice. I left his office with my files still in my hand and a cold certainty settling into my chest. The next day, my system access was quietly limited. Nothing obvious. Just enough to slow me down. That was when I started copying everything. Offline backups. Encrypted drives. I told myself it was just precaution. I was lying. I knew I was crossing a line. Then Marcus stopped showing up. Marcus was the only one who ever double-checked my numbers without being asked. He had mentioned a strange set of transfers a few days before I did. We joked about how messy the system was getting. He said, someone is going to get in trouble for this. I did not realize he meant himself. By Friday, his desk was cleared. No announcement. No farewell email. His name removed from internal directories like he had never existed. I asked around. People avoided eye contact. One person told me he transferred. Another said he quit. No one could tell me where he went. That was when fear stopped being abstract. It became personal. I started noticing things I had ignored before. The way certain accounts were always approved without review. The way external audits skipped entire categories of transactions. The way security badges gave some people access to floors that did not officially exist. It was all there, hidden in plain sight, protected by routine. I stayed late every night after that, waiting until the office emptied, then digging deeper. I traced the money across regions, across currencies, across time zones that should not have aligned so perfectly. United States, South Korea, Middle East corridors tied to conflict zones. Relief funds flowing in, something darker flowing out. My hands would shake sometimes, not from doubt, but from the weight of what I was uncovering. I kept thinking about my husband, about the way he believed in systems, in structure, in the idea that institutions exist to protect people. He died believing that. And here I was, staring at proof that those same systems were being used to exploit the most vulnerable. That thought burned something inside me that I could not put out. The night everything changed, I found the second ledger. It was not supposed to be found. It was buried inside a cluster of automated reconciliation files, disguised as redundant data. But there was a pattern in the timestamps that did not match the rest. Too precise. Too deliberate. I isolated the file and ran a manual decryption script, expecting noise. Instead, I got clarity. Clean entries. No rounding. No masking. Just truth. Names replaced with codes, but the structure was undeniable. Shipment values. Conversion rates. Identity reassignment markers. And at the center of it, a repeating reference that tied multiple routes together. That was the first time I saw his name. Lee Hyun-woo. It appeared again and again, not as a sender or receiver, but as a constant. A node that everything touched but nothing defined. I leaned closer to the screen, my heartbeat loud in my ears. "Who are you?" I whispered, even though I knew no one would answer. Then my laptop flickered. A brief distortion, like interference. A new line appeared at the bottom of the ledger. Not data. A message. Stop. Or you will disappear like the others. I froze. Every instinct told me to shut everything down, to walk away, to pretend I had never seen any of it. That would have been the smart choice. The safe choice. But safe stopped mattering the moment Marcus vanished. I stared at that message for a long time, my reflection faint in the screen, eyes tired but steady. Then I reached for my phone and turned off the ringer. If they were watching, I wanted silence. If they were coming, I wanted time. And if they thought fear would make me stop, they did not understand me at all. I should have walked away the moment his name appeared, but instead I searched for it. That was my first mistake. I ran it through every database I had access to, internal records, external registries, even archived compliance reports that no one bothered to check anymore. Nothing official came back. No executive profile, no donor history, no flagged entity report. It was as if Lee Hyun-woo did not exist in any system that followed rules. That alone told me everything. People like that do not operate in the open. They exist in the spaces between records, where accountability dissolves. I stared at the name again, feeling that same pull I had felt with the numbers, that quiet certainty that this was not random. If the ledger revolved around him, then he was either the architect or the one tearing it apart. I needed to know which. It took me 2 days to find the first real lead, and it did not come from the organization. It came from a pattern in shipping insurance claims, a cluster of losses that were never actually losses. Containers marked as damaged, rerouted, then quietly cleared under private authorization. Each claim linked back to a holding company with no public face, just a rotating set of directors that never stayed longer than a month. But buried in one of the authorization signatures was a variation of the same name. Not identical, but close enough. Hyun W. That was all I needed. I traced the company to a logistics corridor near the port, a place where paperwork mattered less than timing. I told myself I was just observing, just confirming a theory. That was another lie. By the time I drove there that night, I had already crossed into something else entirely. The parking lot was half empty, lit by harsh overhead lights that made everything look colder than it was. Trucks idled in the distance, engines low, like they were waiting for instructions. I sat in my car for a full minute, hands on the steering wheel, forcing myself to breathe evenly. This was not my world. I dealt with spreadsheets, not shadows. But the ledger was real, and so was the damage it was hiding. I stepped out before I could change my mind. Inside, the air smelled like metal and oil, thick and heavy. A few men moved between crates, their voices low, their attention sharp in a way that made it clear they noticed everything. I kept my head down, walking with purpose, the way you do when you do not belong but refuse to show it. It did not take long before someone blocked my path. He did not touch me. He did not need to. His presence alone was enough. "You are lost," he said, not asking. I met his eyes, steady. "I am looking for someone." That was when the room shifted, subtle but immediate. Conversation slowed. Movements paused. Like a signal had passed through the space without a word. The man studied me for a second longer, then stepped aside. That was when I saw him. He was standing near the far end of the warehouse, hands in his coat pockets, posture relaxed in a way that did not match the tension around him. He did not look like what I expected. No obvious display of power, no raised voice, no visible threat. Just stillness. Controlled, deliberate stillness. Lee Hyun-woo looked at me like he had been expecting me. "You should not be here," he said, his voice calm, almost polite. Not a warning, a fact. I felt my pulse spike, but I did not step back. "Your name is in the ledger," I said, keeping my tone even. It appeared more times than any other reference. I needed to know why. For a moment, he said nothing. His gaze did not waver, but there was something behind it, something calculating, measuring. Then he took a step closer. Close enough that I could see the faint scar near his jaw, the kind that does not come from accidents. "Most people who see that ledger do not get the chance to ask questions," he said. That should have scared me more than it did. Maybe I was already past fear. Or maybe I was too deep to turn back. "Then answer me," I said. "Are you running it?" A flicker of something crossed his expression. Not anger, not surprise, something sharper. Disappointment, maybe. "No," he said quietly. "I am hunting it." The words landed heavier than I expected. Hunting meant he knew. Hunting meant he was already inside this war, in a way I had only just stepped into. "You expect me to believe that?" I asked. "You are tied to every route, every transfer. You are the center of it." He shook his head slightly, like I had missed something obvious. "I am the constant because I am the disruption," he said. "Every time money moves, I follow it. Every time it shifts, I cut something out of it. That is why you see my name. Not because I control it, but because I am trying to break it." I searched his face for any sign of deception. I had spent years reading inconsistencies in numbers, in patterns. People were not that different, and what I saw was not a lie. It was something colder. Purpose. Why, I asked. His eyes darkened just enough to tell me I had stepped onto something personal. Because they build it on bodies, he said. Refugees. Families. People who had nothing left. They turned survival into currency. I do not tolerate that. The words hit harder than I expected because they echoed something inside me I had been trying to control since this started. For a second, neither of us spoke. The noise of the warehouse faded into the background, like the world had narrowed to this single moment. Then he straightened slightly, the distance returning. You should leave, he said. Whatever you think you are doing, you are not prepared for what follows. I let out a slow breath. I tried leaving. They started erasing people. That includes me now. His gaze sharpened. That is exactly why you walk away. You disappear quietly, you live. You stay, you become part of this. I knew what he was offering. An exit. A clean one if I moved fast enough. But I also knew what walking away meant. The ledger would keep moving. The system would keep feeding on people who had no way to fight back. I thought about Marcus. About my husband. About every line in that file that represented a life reduced to a transaction. I lifted my chin slightly, meeting his eyes without hesitation. I am already part of it, I said. I just did not choose it before. Something shifted again, not in the room, but in him. Not approval, not agreement, recognition. Then you need to understand what that means, he said. Everyone connected to that ledger will come for you, not just to stop you, to erase you completely. I nodded once. I figured that out. A faint, almost imperceptible exhale left him, like he had accepted something he could not change. Then we do this properly, he said. Not as accountant and observer. As targets. The word settled between us, heavy and final. And for the first time since this started, I realized I was not standing alone anymore. The moment I walked out of that warehouse, the world felt different, like every shadow had weight and every reflection might be watching me back. I did not need confirmation to know it had started. The hunt was no longer one direction. It was everywhere. Hyunwoo did not follow me immediately. He gave me distance, which somehow made it worse. It meant he trusted that I understood the rules now, or that it no longer mattered if I did. I drove home with my hands tight on the wheel, checking mirrors more than the road, every set of headlights behind me stretching my nerves thinner. By the time I reached my building, I knew one thing with absolute clarity. I could not go back to being just an accountant. That version of me would not survive what was coming. I locked my door, closed every curtain, and opened my laptop again. The ledger stared back at me, unchanged, but I saw it differently now. Not as evidence. As a battlefield. 3 major streams controlled everything. Internal corruption inside the organization, quiet and buried under layers of trust. A Middle Eastern gold syndicate moving physical assets through humanitarian corridors. And a rival network tied to Hyunwoo's world, waiting to take control the moment the current system weakened. 3 predators circling the same source of blood. And now me. I exhaled slowly, forcing my thoughts into order. Panic would get me killed. Precision might keep me alive. My phone buzzed once, a message from an unknown number. Do not go to work tomorrow. That was all it said. No signature. I did not need one. I stared at the screen for a second, then powered the phone off. If they knew where I worked, then my routine was already compromised. I needed to move before they did. The next morning, I did not go to the office. Instead, I went somewhere public, crowded, unpredictable. A place where disappearing would be harder, at least temporarily. I sat with my laptop open, blending into noise, pretending to be normal while my eyes tracked every movement around me. That was when I saw him again. He did not sit across from me. He did not approach. He simply existed within the same space, like a constant I had not fully understood until now. You are adapting, he said quietly when he finally took the seat beside me. I did not look at him right away. I am surviving, I replied. There is a difference. A faint pause, then the slightest hint of approval.
Good.
You will need more than that. I turned the screen slightly toward him, revealing the mapped structure I had built overnight. 3 entry points, I said. 3 power sources. If one falls, the others absorb the shock. That is why no one has been able to shut it down. His eyes moved across the data quickly, taking in more in seconds than most would in minutes. And you think you can change that? He asked. I met his gaze. I know I can. I just need to control where the money moves next. That was the moment something shifted between us. Not trust. Something sharper. Alignment. He leaned back slightly, his voice lower now. If you interfere directly, they will not just track you. They will close every exit you have. Then I do not interfere directly, I said. I redirect. I create a choke point. All flows converge, even temporarily. Then I lock it. Silence followed, but it was not empty. It was calculation. You are talking about forcing 3 networks into the same space, he said. That is not control. That is chaos. Exactly, I replied. And chaos is the only moment they're vulnerable. He studied me for a long second, like he was seeing something he had not expected to find. You are not just an accountant, he said. Not anymore, I answered. The first attempt on me came that afternoon. It was not dramatic.
No gunshots, no shouting.
Just a man who followed me too closely when I left the building, his pace matching mine step for step. I changed direction once. He did not hesitate. I changed again. He stayed with me. My pulse steadied instead of rising. Fear had burned out, replaced by something colder. I stepped into a side street, then stopped suddenly. He moved in closer. You should not have done that, he said under his breath. I turned slowly, meeting his eyes. Neither should you. He reached for me. He never finished the motion. Hyun-woo was there before I saw him move, intercepting, redirecting, ending it with a precision that felt almost effortless. The man dropped, silent, unmoving. I stared for half a second, then forced myself to look away. This is what it becomes, he said quietly. I swallowed, steadying my voice. This is what it already was. He watched me, searching for hesitation, for regret. He did not find it. Then we do not wait, he said. You build your choke point. I clear the path. That night, I worked faster than I ever had in my life. Every line of code, every financial pathway, every hidden channel I had uncovered, I pulled them together into one system. A temporary convergence. Fragile, dangerous, but possible. If I timed it right, I could force every transaction through a single controlled node. 12 minutes, I said under my breath, the number forming before I could stop it. 12 minutes to hold everything in place. 12 minutes to expose them all. Behind me, I felt his presence again, silent but steady. If you do this, there is no going back, he said. I did not turn around. There was no back to go to. My fingers hovered over the keys, the weight of what I was about to trigger pressing down harder than anything before. If I shut this down, I said slowly, everyone comes after me. A brief pause, then his voice, calm and absolute. Then I will stand in front of all of them. For a second, the room felt still in a way that had nothing to do with fear or danger. Something unspoken, something neither of us named. Then it passed. Because this was not a story about safety. It was about survival. And I had just chosen my side. I pressed the key before I could second-guess it, and the system responded instantly, like it had been waiting for permission to collapse. One by one, the channels I had mapped began to converge. Transactions rerouted, access points sealed, hidden accounts dragged into a single visible stream. 12 minutes. That was all I had calculated, all the system could hold before it either broke or adapted. The clock on my screen started counting down, each second louder than the last inside my head. At first, nothing happened. Then everything did. Alerts surged across every connected network, internal systems flagging anomalies, external nodes rejecting transfers that suddenly had nowhere to go. Alerts surged across every connected network, internal systems flagging anomalies, external nodes rejecting transfers that suddenly had nowhere to go. Money froze mid-movement, Identities stalled between states, assets suspended in a space that did not officially exist. I watched it unfold with my hands still, forcing myself not to interfere again. This had to hold. It had to expose them. My phone lit up with incoming calls I did not answer. Unknown numbers. Internal extensions. Numbers with no origin at all. They knew. Of course they knew. The first breach attempt hit at minute 3, a direct override command trying to reopen a primary channel. I blocked it. The second came from a mirrored access point I had almost missed. I shut that down too, my fingers moving faster now, precision replacing hesitation. Behind me, I heard movement, controlled, deliberate. Hyunwoo was already positioning himself, not for the system, but for what came after. Minute 6. The ledger began to reveal itself fully, hidden names resolving into real identities, shell structures collapsing into traceable ownership. A politician tied to offshore routes. A syndicate leader linked to gold transfers. Internal executives flagged with clearance they should never have had. It was all there, undeniable, irreversible. This was the moment they would stop protecting the system and start protecting themselves. Minute 8. The first physical response. I heard it before I saw it. The shift in the building, footsteps where there should not be any, doors opening that should have stayed closed. My pulse stayed steady, locked onto the countdown. Fear would waste time I did not have. Hyunwoo moved past me without a word, his presence cutting through the tension like a line drawn in steel. He had made his choice the moment he stayed. Not for power. For me. The realization hit harder than I expected, but there was no space to hold it. Minute 10. The system strained, pressure building across every forced connection, errors stacking faster than I could track. This was the breaking point. Either it held for 2 more minutes, or everything snapped back and buried the truth again. Minute 10. The system strained, pressure building across every forced connection, errors stacking faster than I could track. This was the breaking point. Either it held for 2 more minutes, or everything snapped back and buried the truth again. I leaned closer to the screen, eyes burning, refusing to look away. "You do not get to hide," I whispered, not to anyone in particular, but to the entire structure I had dragged into the light. Minute 11. Final breach attempt. Stronger. Coordinated. I countered it with everything I had built, locking the last open pathway, sealing the choke point completely. Silence followed, heavy and absolute. Then the timer hit 0. The system froze. Not partially. Completely. Every transaction suspended. Every identity exposed. Every connection visible. For one perfect, irreversible moment, the truth existed without protection. I exhaled slowly, my body finally registering the weight of what I had done. It was over, and it was just beginning. I transmitted the ledger immediately, multiple channels, federal authorities, international watchdogs, endpoints that could not all be silenced at once. Once it left my system, it could not be pulled back. The collapse would follow. Arrests. Investigations. Panic. I leaned back in my chair, exhaustion hitting all at once, but something else beneath it. Clarity. I thought I was balancing numbers. I thought my job was to keep systems stable, to make sure everything added up. I was wrong. Sometimes the system is the problem. Sometimes balance means breaking it. I turned slightly, meeting his eyes for the first time since it ended. He had lost something tonight. I could see it in the quiet tension he carried, a part of his empire, a layer of control he would never get back. But he was still here. So was I. That was enough. If exposing the truth destroys everything built around it, even the parts that seemed good, would you still choose to do it? Because now I know. Silence is not neutral. It is part of the system. And I am done being part of it. I do not know what comes next for me, or for him, or for the world we just cracked open. Systems will rebuild. New shadows will form. People will try to forget. But I will not. Because I have seen what hides behind clean numbers and kind words. And once you see it, you cannot go back. You either stay silent, or you choose to stand in the fire and force the truth into the light. I made my choice. Now, I want to hear yours. If you were in my place, would you have pulled the trigger on that system, knowing it could destroy everything around it? Tell me in the comments. And if this story pulled you in, if you felt that tension, that choice, that line between fear and action, do not forget to like, subscribe, and stay with me. Because some stories are not just told, they're lived.